Hello, innovators. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today, we're talking with Thomas Joy, the creative director of the Beacon Agency, award-winning marketing agency specializing in smart home and IoT industries. Thank you for joining me on the PolyMath PolyCast.
Thank you very much, Dustin. Very excited to be with you.
Yeah, and then so this is a show by PolyInnovator. So please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hello, innovators, both in the US and UK and around the world as well.
It's interesting. I've gotten a lot of people from across the pond on this show, and it's just funny how, like, even despite that, the cultural differences, there's still a lot of the same problems that we're facing.
Absolutely, it's something that we find working. We've got quite a few clients, both sides of the Atlantic, and do you know what? Like, although there is a slight cultural difference, I'm a strong believer that there's a lot more that ties us together than differentiates us.
For sure. And so one thing I always have people do to start off as an icebreaker is to share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
That is a very good question. I suppose a lot of people in my sort of professional job don't know is that I still enjoy a lot of time on the stage in my spare time. It's something that I don't usually shout about that much, but I spend when theatres are reopened once again, and when they were opened, yes, very keenly on stage in an amateur capacity. I might just add quickly there.
I just presumed you were a professional, so don't worry. It's
you're too kind. You're too kind.
Hello and welcome to the PolyMath PolyCast interviews and discussions. So you got smart homes and like the Smart Life podcast going on, as well as the musical directing and just acting and all these different aspects of your life here. So what got you started before all that? What was your mindset?
So I think the thing that really drives me to do everything that I do, be it the business, setting up the business, the job that I'm in now, and all the sort of the various hobbies and things, the extracurricular stuff, I guess, is that truthfully, I hate being bored.
Yeah.
I cannot stand an evening like wasted. So I think that, for the past, ever since I can really remember, back to when I was in school and really ever since then, I always sort of pushed myself to accomplish more, to achieve more, and things like that. So I think that's why I've got quite a wide range of interests and things that I like to fill my time with. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, like, it sounds a silly thing to say, I'm certainly not successful at everything I turn my hand to. There are any mountain of projects that I have started and not finished. But I'm a strong believer in just, do you know what? This is what I want to try today. So let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, well, and I've met a lot of people who don't finish projects. I had a graphics design kind of hobby I would do over the years, and I, for some reason, could never get those projects finished. I'd always add more to it and just express the creativity more in some ways. And I resonate with you too. There's a lot of points where, like, if you're sitting here not doing something, it just feels anxious in a way. I don't know about you, but I can't sit there and watch a TV show for too long because I feel like I could be doing something else. Exactly.
And I think that as being in a creative role that I am now, there is a slight, there are two things that are at odds essentially, which is the need to constantly feel productive, but also the necessity to have some downtime, to switch off, to recharge, to sleep, to rest, because when you're tired, you're exhausted, you're never, especially from a creative point of view, you're never going to be producing your best work. So there's kind of trying to find that balance of feeling free enough that you can not do anything, but also not feeling too anxious that you have to be accomplishing something. And I think that actually that's a struggle for quite a lot of people. Whether or not you're in a technical role or a creative role or anything like that, there's creativity in every role, and it comes better when you are, rested, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and there's also that kind of overworking mentality too, that a lot of people get burned out because they keep trying to be too creative or too productive and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And especially where a lot of people these days have side hustles.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can be just as much work as a full-time job, if not more, especially for the things that you're passionate about. You push yourself harder and harder because, one day they could be, the main thing. But, even when they are, you're always then going to have side projects. And especially in a world where, with technology and everything else, you don't need anything more than a laptop to have a side hustle these days. It's easier than ever, which is why I think a lot of people are pushing themselves harder than ever.
Right. I mean, I'm doing the same thing where I'm sitting here just like, I want to do more and more. If I could just do 2 weeks of hard work, I can relax after that or something like that. So What is it like to be a creative director?
It is never boring. I can guarantee you that. I can promise you that. It's a very exciting job. I genuinely love my job. But I think that there's a challenge in the role, in that you sit, because I quite often work with a lot of freelance creatives, for example, but also then have the client, my client, the strategy team that we have internally who work with our clients. And there is a kind of role of middle management, I suppose, that you're sat amongst sometimes. You're deciding a direction, you are deciding what you want things to be like, but also working in the confines, for example, of brand guidelines and tone of voice documents. And especially from an outside, like external marketing agency point of view, where we work with in-house teams, they have, a lot of different teams have different ways of doing things. So it's always a kind of a balancing act of being able to feel you have the freedom to be as creative as you want and to push things and to push ideas, which is really exciting, but also in the day-to-day practicality of, well, these are the guidelines, this is the budget, these are the expectations. So it's a very exciting job, and there is trust me, no day is the same, which I love. Again, I think that comes down to being, hating being bored. Right. So I'm never bored, that's for certain, but also sometimes it can be a lot of plate spinning just to kind of try and get everything delivered.
Yeah, I totally get that, because I just to put it in perspective, at one point I held 6 positions at my first job just to feel the insanity of it, and I just wanted to mention that to you so you can just understand, I get that whole boredom thing. I didn't want to sit down and just do one thing.
And do you know what? And I totally get it. Sometimes it's easier just to say, do you know what? That needs doing. I'll do it. At least I won't be bored. And then before you know it, it's snowballed and you've got 100 things on your plate to do. But
True. They really do pile up. And so what are some of your best expressions of creativity?
Sometimes I think that it's a really interesting thing, creativity, because I think that a lot of people don't, see sometimes as, especially creative professionals, it's like, oh, well, it's creative, it's a very particular set of skills, a very particular mindset. And actually, I think truthfully, and maybe this comes from having a more eccentric background, in terms of my career path, is that both in professional life and personal life, all of us are creative every day. That comes down to everything from what we post on social media to the words that we choose in conversation. Creativity is part and parcel of the human experience. So picking, some way of trying to summarize, what my best creative sort of expression is, kind of like the answer is totally different on a daily basis. Sometimes we'll get a client brief through and they say, we need a 30-second video that perfectly summarizes our proposition and offering. And I'm like, okay, great. And you can do it. You can sometimes I feel so, I get it. I get it so much. I was like, yes, this is it. This is the vision, X, Y, Z. But you know what? Sometimes some of the prouder things that things that, you and the client won't see eye to eye. You have to sit down, you have to chat, you have to work through these things, you have to draft, you have to amend. And actually, I think there's a great deal more excitement and relief and a feeling of success when those projects get delivered. And sometimes they are the most, it sounds a weird thing to say, they're sometimes some of the most creative, some of the less creative, because, you've got to rein in some of your ideas to fit guidelines or brands or things like that. So, but also there's some of the projects that you look back and go and say, do you know what? That was hard bloody work, but worth it, 100%.
I love that. And I think that it's interesting too, how there is certain points where you might get into the state of flow and actually achieve those higher intensity states where you're like, hey, we need 30 seconds, that's it. And I'm honestly wondering how to go about that too, because there's always something that needs to be explained in a short time span. How do you get the right words, the right moment, with the right reason behind it?
Yeah. And do you know what it comes down to is great people. I know this sounds, again, it's a silly thing to say, working with people that have the skills to reduce messages to essentially sound bites. There's a very particular skill. But also, and this is something that when we work with our clients, we're so keen to kind of get across to them, is the idea of storytelling. It's something that runs through all of our work. And actually, the first thing that we often do with clients, especially new clients, is understand like the story behind the business, the story behind the brand. What is the narrative that is forming your marketing that you want to get across? Because actually, sometimes, you know, businesses are sometimes businesses are so focused on culture or their product or the technical details that actually they don't have the mindset of the, you know, the layperson, the normal consumer that's looking at this and going, okay, but how does that interact with my life? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a combination of working with people that understand that process and can also guide the customer through that process, guide the client through that process as well, because sometimes the client hasn't thought about it, especially if they're in, for example, small teams, they don't have a dedicated marketing function, they're software engineers, they're, you know, designers. Sometimes you kind of need to sit down and say, you know, tell us about what you're trying to achieve. And often, you know, they go, oh, well, I'm not sure. We just had this idea and we've kind of run with it, but, you know, we've not really thought about the messaging, for example. So I think it's making sure that we kind of understand not just, you know, for example, you know, if you're selling hardware, it's not just, you know, understanding the technical details of what you're selling, but why you're selling it. I think that makes a huge difference.
Not talking about the features per se, but telling it why it's important to that particular person and demographic. And it's interesting too, because it's kind of like Simon Sinek's Start With Why, understanding what the reason is behind it. And it's interesting because over the years, I've remade my website, for example, and I've always tried to have that start with why mentality. I've always thought about that and kept it in the forefront. But even despite those efforts, I've noticed over the years that things got too technical or too overbearing for people. They're like, what does that mean? I don't know why I'm looking at this because it just seems too pitchy instead of like, what is it for me? And so it's interesting how just at each iteration, one of them might be really worded really well and explain the concept really well, but the next iteration that goes out the window and now it's too technical again. And I feel like a lot of companies don't even have the self-awareness of just like, hey, is this happening to what we're doing here?
Yeah. And also context change. You know, the market changes, people change. You know, look at how much the world has changed in the past 12 months, even the last 6 months.
Right.
So people's, like, the genuine shared human experience that we're all going through changes people's perception of things. You know, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. But, you know, I think that marketing and, well, you know, any kind of corporate or commercial function works best when it is dynamic and flexible enough to respond to, you know, not just market conditions, not just economics, but also, you know, social events. You know, what's going on, you know, in the world, in the country, you know, any locale. So I think, it's marketing in particular. The danger then, I will say, of course, is that sometimes, you know, you don't want to sometimes appear as if you're capitalizing off, you know, especially if things, you know, are bad that are happening. You know, we saw it, for example, with a few years ago with the Pepsi campaign, with the Black Lives Matter and movement, and there's and there's still a discussion here, for example, around how companies, you know, profiteer off the Pride movement now. You know, in the UK we have, you know, a Pride month, and I'm sure you may have something similar in the US. And, you know, all of these companies will change their, you know, social icons and talk about, you know, how they support it. But actually then all they're doing is essentially virtue signaling and bits like that. So there is definitely a case for, in terms of what, you know, the big trend, you know, the consumer trend at the moment is you know, for those brands that put their money where their mouth is, essentially, you know, ones that are genuinely honest, and, you know, transparent with their consumers and aren't just paying lip service to what they perceive the market cares about.
Well, and it also seems like, too, a lot of those companies who are changing the pictures to be more of a rainbow or all black picture, something like that, too, it's like the CEOs say something completely different. So the marketing team might be trying to go on that trend or wave, whereas the actual people leading the company are maybe opposite to that ideal.
Exactly.
On top of that, too, it's interesting how what this situation going on now, not just with BLM or even Pride, but also the pandemic, which I'm sure we'll touch on a bit later too. There's an idea of the hierarchy of needs, where some companies address the needs of people, like, hey, we provide food, shelter, that kind of thing. In those cases, I was talking with Mark Schaefer, who is a marketing expert, and he was talking about how like those kind of companies need to double down on their marketing efforts during this time to maximize their growth. Because, like for example, HelloFresh is like a food delivery service. They were able to really grow during this time because people can't go out. But then other companies that are more on the idea of like, hey, we're just here for that, help boost your life. We don't really care, like self-development, that kind of thing, stuff that's not really that important when it comes to your actual survival. Those companies need to pivot. And so there's an interesting dynamic of marketing there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to see what's happened this year with, you know, the winners and losers. And I think that actually, you know, what we chat a lot with our clients around, you know, in terms of, you know, the changing nature of work, you know, and how we're living our lives. Actually, I don't think that the pandemic has changed things per se. I think that actually all it's done is accelerate the changes that were happening anyway. Right. So, you know, companies we're always going to have to adapt. It's just that they're now going to have to adapt a hell of a lot faster, which, do you know what? I don't think is a bad thing. I really don't.
In particular, higher education is really interesting how that's adapting, and they're failing to adapt. Ironically, some of the bigger companies, or say companies, but they act like companies, but they're higher education institutions. They're normally going to be enough money in the funds to kind of stay alive for a little bit, and some of the lower level ones that are kind of entry for some people, those might be able to adapt. But the ones in the middle are the ones that are going to suffer from it. And I've been just last night, I was looking at trajectories for that, and I thought it was interesting how many organizations aren't able to adapt. And it's curious to see which ones are and which ones aren't.
Yeah. And I think that it's, you know, for those companies that are, you know, large enough that they have the resources to be able to adapt, they're fine. And also, you know, in the UK in particular, we're currently now in recession. You know, you look at the last recession, that, you know, the 2008 financial crisis, you know, some of the biggest brands that we have today were born out of that. You know, you look at, you know, Uber, you know, Slack, you know, all of these big tech companies were born out of a need that arose last time. So I think that, you know, like you say, if you're at the top or you're just starting, it's a fantastic time to be innovating if you have the capacity to do it. It's those kind of stale, for want of a better words, companies in the middle that are very like set in their ways, and they don't have either the resources or the mindset to adapt that quickly. If your response to saying we need to adapt is, oh, but we've always done it this way, you're going to fail sooner or later, you know. And I get that also it's tricky, you know, between the recession, between the sheer intensity of change that's needed. You know, it is a huge challenge for companies that, you know, may well have done things the same way since they started 20, 30, 40 plus years ago. I suppose in a sort of nutshell, that's capitalism for you. You know, you have to move with the market, you know, rightly or wrongly. So,
well, they say that the species most likely to adapt is much more likely to survive, not the ones who are strong or fast, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to some of the questions here too, from having a law degree to working in smart home and IoT, what caused that dissonance there, if there is one in your opinion?
Oh boy, okay, good question. So growing up, especially as a teenager, all I wanted to do was, in the UK we have things called, our legal profession is essentially split in two between solicitors and barristers. Solicitors tend to be kind of the more paperwork, corporate kind of like, you know, litigation, that side of things. Barristers in the UK are the ones with fancy wigs, the black gowns, the good old fashioned courtroom drama kind of style. And that's all I wanted to do growing up. I was really fascinated with criminal law in particular. So much so that when I was studying for the last exams I had before going to university, I used to jump on, in my free periods at school, I used to jump on the train, go into town and sit in court and just watch, because I was so interested, I was so fascinated. So I studied for my exams and I got into university to go and study law. And I realized pretty quickly, whilst I really loved the subject, the environment and the dynamic amongst law students is not great. And I quickly realized that I really enjoy working collaboratively. I love working with people. I love bouncing ideas off people. I love, you know, that whole teamwork process, I suppose. So the problem is when you go into a degree that, you know, people are, you know, naturally quite not combative, but quite they know what they want. And especially because I sort of went into university at the time where the legal profession here in the UK is financially challenged, especially because a lot of it is state sponsored, like it's you know, paid for taxation, whatever. So the number of like training contracts and what we call pupilages to train to be a barrister in the UK were being slashed, like numbers were being reduced and reduced and reduced. So essentially all of your peers that, you know, you're meant to be working with and you're studying together, you're very conscious that all of you are going to be fighting for the same few contracts, the same few roles. So you kind of go through this and you say, oh, well, you know, these are my friends and I really enjoy studying with them, but at the end of the day also they are my competition.
Yeah.
And it doesn't foster a particularly like friendly environment. So I think by default, I found my natural friendship group at university outside of my course. And then came kind of decision time, like, okay, do I want to go to law school following my law degree, or do I want to go and just do something else? And I think I was a little bit fed up of the law by this point. I still enjoyed it, but the environment just wasn't nice or enjoyable. So I had the question of like, oh shit, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was also, having lived for a student for 3 years, I was like, do you know what? What I would really like right now is a, you know, paycheck at the end of the month. I don't particularly, as much as I love my parents, I didn't particularly want to move back in like with them long term. I kind of wanted to like, do you know what? Like if I have to move back, fine, but I want to move out again pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what do I know how to do? Like what transferable skills can I use? Anything? And my dad had spent, you know, growing up, my dad was an IT project manager and, you know, IT manager. I was like, okay, well, I kind of know that world. And I guess I can go and like do something like project management or business analysis. Because, you know, I can, you know, doing something like business analysis, for example, when you are presented with a problem, you are presented with all these different people saying different things, and you have to tie together a narrative. You have to tie together, you know, a way of doing things, a solution. Actually, that kind of fitted my, yeah, precisely. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go and do that. So I did. I got onto a graduate scheme with an American-based financial technology company, and kind of fell in, you know, I started with project management and was looking at doing like my Prince 2 qualifications, you know, for project management, all the rest of that.
Right.
But kind of more then started looking more towards sort of the business analysis side of things, because I quite enjoyed that whole problem solving and like process design kind of way of doing things. So I kind of do like a hybrid kind of that and a bit of systems admin working with Salesforce, and did that for a couple of years. And I'm not going to lie, got kind of bored doing it. It's quite repetitive. It's quite technical. It's quite detail oriented. And by this time so from a creative point of view, I'm practically entirely self-taught. So during this time I was teaching myself how to do things and picking up a couple of freelance gigs like here and there and bits like that. And then when the opportunity arose itself, my business partner, Jess, who I know through our local theatre, we used to do, and we still do, shows together, said, hey, I've got a bit of an opportunity. I'm thinking about doing this. Do you fancy coming on board as my creative director? I was like, sure, that sounds like fun. Why not? Can't go wrong, right? And so that was nearly 2 years ago now. And to be honest, I think that because I wasn't getting necessarily like the creative fulfillment from my other role,
right,
it was a bit of a no-brainer by this point. I was like, I didn't particularly like my job. It paid the bills. I was turning up, I was doing it, but I didn't have much love for it. So that's kind of how I ended up in the role that I'm in now, purely by chance and a bit of meandering around different industries.
Yeah. Well, they say that, from what you said there too, it actually sounds, Thomas, like a solutions architect role that you were kind of doing before in a way.
Yeah.
And I was actually watching a video last night that talked about how when people talk about where they got to where they are, and they talk about how, oh, I did it with just my hard work and that kind of thing, they're often not as happy. But when they say like, oh, there was a bit of luck, there was kind of a bit of chance, most of the time there's a bit more gratitude in there. So when you said that, I was like, that made me think of that. And And one more thing that I noticed too, I don't know why I can't get this out of my head now, but it seems like with your black outfit and the white collar, you almost look kind of like a judge on this camera here. And I was more.
Not intentionally, but you know what? I'll take that. I'll take it as a compliment.
Well, and now you're a judge of the creative kind of thing.
Indeed. I'll definitely take that. Definitely.
And so I think the journey you have there, it seems logical. It seems like it fits, and I get why you got bored. Because I mean, like, yeah, sure, if you do it for a long enough time, you're gonna get bored of anything, I feel like, and that's okay. And so you also said you're mainly self-taught. So you're speaking our language here on this PolyCast.
Oh yes, yeah.
So definitely. You started. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you started your own show called the Smart Life Podcast. What is it about for those who don't know, and what inspires you?
Yeah, so again, myself and my business partner Jess, when we set up the agency, we were kind of like a real way of like connecting with our peers within the industry. You know, it's good, you know, personal branding to, you know, be chatting and making connections. But also the smart home market industry is a very odd kind of place in terms of, you know, consumer attitudes to it. So what we kind of wanted to do was break down some of the stories behind the headlines, break down some of like the mystery around what these products are, why they exist, you know, what problems they can solve. So we kind of set out with that kind of dual intention and dual purpose of, you know, have somewhere for the industry to kind of connect. And we actually when we established it, we worked with the UK Smart Homes and Buildings Association, just to kind of like, which is a fantastic sort of business network here in the UK and in Europe. Just kind of say, hey guys, we're thinking about setting this up. You know, it'd be great, you know, you can come and talk about, you know, what your company's trying to achieve, the problems you're kind of coming up against and bits like that. So all whilst informing and educating the customer about, you know, what the market is, what, you know, what products there are, what solutions there are, and bits like that. So that's kind of that aim that we felt, and it remains kind of one of our real goals, is to kind of demystify what the market is and why it exists and what solutions there are out there. So yeah, it's not like, unfortunately, it's not like a proper full-time podcast. We managed to get a few episodes out. We were sort of really pumped up and fired. Then kind of the business took over, I suppose, a little bit. But now we've kind of like, we're just about halfway through our second series at the moment, but we're sort of in that position now where we can actually sort of structure it in terms of our in our time a little bit better. So yeah, and it's great fun. It's really interesting, because I think the industry is a place of such innovation and creativity naturally by, you know, people who are problem solvers. There's a really great kind of vibe amongst a lot of, like, you know, even the more established brands are still, you know, they're not that old. So there's still kind of that spirit of innovation and invention and problem solving. So yeah, it's a really cool space to be in, and we just love talking, you know, with people in our industry, because, you know, they're genuinely fascinating people.
For sure. And I keep thinking about the fact that you only had a handful of episodes, but they're quality episodes, and you have a quality show, it looks like, too. I've seen a lot of different podcasts crop up over the years, and most of them, supposedly the statistics are around like 22 episodes. Once they get past that hurdle, they usually stay, or like 6 months. Like after 6 months, they drop off, something like that. And like, when did you start the first episode? I didn't look at the dates. But
so we actually started pretty much January last year.
Okay.
But our first series was literally 4 episodes. And we've got about 10 episodes planned for our second series at the moment. And I think that the two things that kind of really spur us on in terms of, you know, keeping producing them and bits like that is that I think because we don't commit to a regular schedule, you know, it's very much something that we can kind of almost dip in and out of a little bit. You know, when we've got, you know, some great content or some great people, it's like, okay, let's put together an episode. Let's have a chat. Obviously it comes with the kind of the trade-off that you don't build up momentum sometimes between episodes.
Right.
But the other thing that we have really kind of like was worth doing, I suppose, you know, one of the great things to come out of this was after, I think, our second or third episode, we were approached by a design company over in their European head office is in Berlin. They're a Japanese company called Good Patch, who do some really fascinating design work. And they were doing it. They do a series of talks. They were in person, they're now digital at the moment. They cover all, every week is or every session they do is a different kind of topic. And they got in contact. They said, "Hey, we've heard your podcast, really like it. Do you want to send somebody over to come and take part in one of these talks?" So yeah, after about a month and a half or so of doing it, I was on a plane over to Berlin and got to chat to a whole room full of brilliant designers, everything from sort of the UI UX community, also to product designers and engineers and bits like that. And it was such a brilliant way of we actually did a really interesting talk. Well, I think it was interesting because I gave it a talk on like the issues with marketing in the smart home, how the industry is kind of lacking.
Was that the one you sent me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I watched that one. It was good.
Yeah. But it was it's a different approach. And I think that the reason that we found, again, some success as an agency is that marketing seems to be one of the areas in the smart home market that people still are working out what does and doesn't work, and we kind of found a bit of a gap in the market. And yeah, so it was a different approach to the market beyond just design, engineering, and bits like that. So yeah, that's kind of what spurs us on, is that we've been able to make those connections and get our message out there a little bit about things that that we're passionate about in the industry. But also it's a great way of like I say, connecting with people in the industry as well. Yeah,
that seems interesting because it is a nice way to network with people. And on top of that, if you have 10 more shows to go, I think that as long as you keep going, like, it doesn't really matter about the time beneath it. There's some YouTube channels, for example, which kind of act like podcasts in a way, where the way they release content, at least the drip. There's some that release once a month, but it's so high quality or something like that, or once a week, but they try to make sure it's like, okay, this is the weekly stuff that we get. You can expect it on this time, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's good. And so despite talking a lot about smart homes, I find it ironic that you live in a historical house. So can you explain that dichotomy for me?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, a lot of it actually lies around what I consider, this is a bit of a long-winded answer, so bear with. For a time when I was in my old job, again, in systems solutions, worked in central London. Something that I always wanted to do. So I live about 30 miles outside of London, so I was commuting in and out of London every day. And I basically realized doing that job that what I look for, or what I need, despite working in tech and in a quite fast-paced industry, is a slower pace of life. I hated working in London, not because of the job, not because of the company. I worked with some great people, but because I was always tired. I was commuting about 2.5 hours each way. I was, leaving before the sun came up, and, was getting home way before it had, set. I had no time to do my hobbies. I was just, by the time I got to the weekend, all I ever really wanted to do was sleep. So I was like, I wasn't being productive. And so I think that actually the things that, since then, the things that I'm sort of more interested in are a lot more sort of about, not kind of, it sounds a weird thing to say, not that kind of like country cottagey kind of feel, but basically like the fact that I'm, growing my own vegetables, the fact that I kind of like taking walks in the countryside. We have the dog, obviously. And so I think that kind of slower pace of life, I find that I do better work, when I'm kind of have that surrounding where I don't feel just intense pressure constantly, And the reason I used to hate working in an office is I felt like I was chained to a desk, and said, right, between the hours of 9 and 5:30, you're going to be productive. Whereas famously, I'm quite a night owl. I do my best work between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's kind of like the golden period for me. So I think that having that kind of environment where you can take things a little bit easier, a little bit gentler, you're not feeling almost, you kind of have that disconnect between what your work is and your environment. So yeah, that's kind of, and that goes, not just the house, but also the kind of the various different elements of my life, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because for me, it's 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. are my highlights, and there's an idea of the circadian rhythm, like when you personally get your energy, and so we both get our energy at 10 p.m. For some reason, last night, ironically though, I went to bed at like 9 and woke up at 4 a.m. Or no, I went to bed at like 8, which is super
But
uncharacteristic.
if you have the freedom to do that though, and this is what we work with quite a lot of freelancers and people that we work with even in-house. Part of the ethos behind the agency is that people are free to, so long as you hit the deadline, right? So long as you do good work on time, I don't care when you do it. Like, do it when you're going to do it best, And if you say, at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, oh, do you know what? I'm not feeling this, but it's not due to tomorrow, but I'll get it to you before the morning. Okay, great. Okay. So I think, and this goes, one of the big ethoses and the guiding principles of the business and the agency is that happy people do good work. If you trust people to say, this is what I need, do it when you want. I feel like the quality of work gets better.
Well, exactly. And you were mentioning earlier how things are accelerating. It's interesting how with this work from home mentality from the pandemic, people are starting to work more at their natural circadian hours because some companies track like your mouse movement and to see when you're actually active and crap like that. It's so stupid. But and most companies don't care. They're like, hey, work when you need to work. Just make sure it gets done. They had to be that way because they're like, hey, you're working from home. We don't know how to run this just yet. And I think there's a lot of companies realizing, hey, the actual production is way higher quality and often more effective too. And so hobbies come and go as well. You're talking about how you didn't have time for your hobbies with that 9 to 5 schedule. Like you said, you recently taken up growing your own veggies. How has that developed?
Do you know what? I am having so much fun doing it. And I've done this really stupid thing that I'm charting on my Instagram stories. And I'm picking up people just either I'm asking for advice or I'm just kind of updating people saying, this is where we're at. I've just harvested my first couple of tomatoes. Things like that. I'm all about that social engagement. But I actually, it's a despite having said that, it's a kind of a move for me of trying to have a bit of a digital detox, I suppose. I was spending so much time either on my phone or at my desk. I was like, do you know what? I need to take up a hobby that doesn't involve me sitting in a chair, that is slower paced, that I can really kind of sink my teeth into and enjoy. So one weekend I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do it. So I went to the garden centre, bought a load of pots, bought a load of tomato plants, and I'm having obviously it's slow progress. We must be on about week 8 or 9, and I've just harvested the first ones. But I think I actually get a much better sense of accomplishment by sort of tending these things, by slowly watching them grow and also failing as well. It's a new hobby. I was also trying to grow some herbs at the same time, and they have all died. I didn't get so much as a single leaf of basil off the plant. So I was like, do you know what? Lesson learned. Things went wrong, and that's okay. So I think for me, it's being a little bit more in tune. It's a little bit more in tune with nature as well. And it's a really weird thing to say. But I think that because the nature of my work is either so digital and the technology that, the brands that we work with is so technical, actually it's so nice to spend an afternoon outside pottering in the garden or, taking your, going foraging for, we've got loads of blackberries around us at the moment. I'm like, I'm going to spend an afternoon with a, big plastic tub and I'm going to go and collect a load of blackberries. It's a really nice way of, even if I'm not sleeping, I'm kind of mentally disconnecting and recharging and resetting.
There's a term like nothing box or there's kind of something that just makes you don't have to think about it. It's non-conscious effort. And something you mentioned on your Instagram too is you're an all-around old soul, and maybe that's why you enjoy it too.
Definitely. I know this were kind of the hobbies that I have, and interestingly, I think because I've grown up as a musician, I'm kind of used to that. I'm used to things taking time, to putting in the work to get good at something. So, silly things I've also taken, about this time last year, I took up cross stitch, needlepoint. And don't get me wrong, it's slow work, but I can just sit there, I can put on a podcast, I can put on, I can put on some music, I can put on the radio, and I can just sit there. I still feel as if I'm being productive, but I'm kind of disengaging and I'm just letting my mind wander. And that is creatively, like professionally, that's some of the most important time is time I spend not doing work and thinking about things instead of just doing them mindlessly.
Yeah. And so it's interesting how you talked about not doing mindlessly. It's almost like it's automated, and something that you wanted to talk about, and I kind of want to as well, is automation too. So my knowledge of automation mainly stays in marketing. So it was like IFTTT, Zapier, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So how is smart home automation different or even similar to those?
So I think that automation really is the key to delivering smart home as a solution.
Okay.
So just to kind of give you a bit of context, like where the marketing is and where a lot of the messaging is at the moment. If you're trying to sell someone, for example, a smart light bulb, like a Philips Hue, for example, or a LifeX bulb, mm-hmm. people say, why do I need that? I have light bulbs in my house already. You're not trying to sell something brand sparkling new. You're trying to sell a replacement for something they already have. And this is where I think that, we argue that a lot of marketing is going wrong. If you're trying to sell someone a smart light switch, they're saying, oh, you can turn all your lights on using your voice. And someone says, well, I can just get up and turn it off at the switch. That's the solution. Whereas if you kind of introduce this idea of being able to automate certain parts of your life that actually represent genuine solutions. Mm-hmm. So again, for example, as a pet owner, I know if my partner and I are out the house and it's getting dark, I can turn my lights on remotely to make sure the dog isn't sat in the dark.
Right.
Silly things like that. For example, I've got some, at Christmas, I can plug my Christmas tree lights in to a smart plug. And when I want to go to bed, I don't have to crawl around the back of the tree to turn them off. Yeah. I can just do it either through my phone or through my voice or whatever. So, and I think the other thing as well is that you look at sort of a lot of smart home, you see a lot of show homes, and it's what my business partner Jess calls kind of like the Californication of tech. Is that it's all these kind of beachfront glass chrome homes with these wonderful families with 2.5 kids and a dog, and whereas actually the reality is, if you kind of, one of the the best examples I remember giving was you've got a single mum with a kid in one hand and a bag of shopping in the other. All she needs to do is unlock her front door to get out from the rain. If she's got a smart lock that unlocks, geofencing, she doesn't have to worry about getting wet in the rain trying to find her keys. And it's simple things like that where you can deliver automation to provide genuine solutions for real people. Mm-hmm. That way it's so much more successful in terms of messaging, and people can understand how they can use this technology to really make a difference.
Yeah, and just for example, with IoT, it's not a smart tech per se, but it's the app kind of thing. I was able to set my phone to turn off Bluetooth as soon as I leave that device or something like that, whereas I don't have to do that. And I often forget to do so. And by doing that, my phone dies significantly quicker, and then I'm not able to use it when I get home or something like that. And so it is interesting how that's just one situation. I ended up working for a escape room facility. And they had smart tech everywhere. They had the smart lock, they had the smart light bulbs everywhere, and they were using the iPads to do all the services and stuff like that. But there was one particular escape room where the lighting had to be dim because it was supposed to take place in the Civil War of the U.S. And the lighting was at just a super eerie orange level. But if someone was like, man, I can't see anything, and it was like an older person, something like that, and a person with impaired vision, we would be like, nice, and like turn up the light just a little bit. And like, you can't really do that with most lights. You can't really just go into the room, flip the little dimmer switch in the side and whatnot.
And there are so many, it's a perfect example, there are so many good use cases that, just clever automation, and it's not even complex automation. Some of like just the basics, it can make genuine difference to people's daily lives. And I think that the more we kind of talk about that, and the more we explore, the more we explore the problems that we can solve, rather than just listing features, the better people, or the more receptive people will be to these products and the very concept of the smart home.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it goes back to the idea of the why. Like, why is this important? What not the features of a smart home. We don't care. Like you said, it's like turning on the light switch is the same as telling, hey, Google, turn on the light switch or something like that. And I hope, did he go off? Okay.
Right.
It's interesting because it's the same action, just easier. And you and I know that, but not everyone else is going to know that or know what's important. And so it's interesting too. We'll talk more about smart homes in a little bit, but just from your kind of interesting background, which you touched on earlier, from law degree to musicals and running your own startup, how has your multidisciplinary life developed? How has it been for you? How do you feel?
Yeah. A lot of the time when I was starting out, especially starting out with the agency, I had to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, because I was like, I'm not trained to do this. I don't come from this background. I work with people that are better qualified, know what they're doing, have a background in it, have experience doing it. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, to begin with, it was kind of tough. Like, even just, despite having, wide, variety of backgrounds, I was like, I don't fit the traditional molds of people that work in people like me in, similar jobs. However, I think I've since found that it's I suppose one of my strengths, in that I can kind of appreciate, when I'm designing something, or when I'm, briefing other creatives or working with other people, I've kind of sat client side. I know what it's like to be in a commercial world where you've got some problems to solve. So I think that having that background means that, for me, being interdisciplinary means that actually you just have a broader skill set that you can apply in different situations. And I think that there is a tendency to look at people that are interdisciplinary, they're kind of the jack of all trades, is saying, well, they never could concentrate long enough to master one thing. They have to just keep bouncing around between. But I think it's a lot different. It's having the capacity to be constantly learning, to be constantly developing, and also constantly apply totally different skill sets to totally different problems. And I think that actually that makes you a much more sort of, hopefully, I think that makes you a much more sort of valuable team member. And it certainly helped me, in my job now, and even setting up the agency, which I did with my business partner. We came from very different backgrounds, and I found that when we were registering as a company, I was like, okay, but I've gone through the legal process. I know company law, so I can kind of help out there. And so yeah. I think that actually there is a tendency, like I say, to look at people that are interdisciplinary to kind of go, that just means that they're not good at anything in particular. Whereas actually, I think that people can be very good because of the different skill sets at a lot of things. And it also kind of gives them a different perspectives on problems, which I think is always useful.
For sure. And I think that you might not seem like you're a good fit before, like it seemed like you were kind of imposter syndrome, but you're the perfect fit for this show. So good on you on that there. And it's interesting too, I'll take that. It's interesting too, because you're right. Like, a jack of all trades is often perceived as a bad thing. Oh, they lack focus, that kind of thing. And sure, a jack of all trades generally, in my understanding, is more of a novice or maybe a depth level of competency in different areas. But the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but also sometimes better than a master of one, because of that transferable skills. And you even said that earlier, like the very beginning of the conversation, transferable skills, being able to take one idea and bridge it to another area. And also too, if your company needs legal advice, guess who they can go to? Now they don't have to hire someone else out or find some specialist that I can talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it's a silly thing to say as well. It also means that because both myself and my business partner Jess, we're quite multidisciplinary people, I suppose, is that we can do a lot more in-house and save money for the client to do, Jess and I regularly will do like the voiceovers for client, if we're doing client videos, like explainer videos, we've both got like theatrical backgrounds. So we'll do the voiceovers. So like, well, sure, you could spend a couple of £100 hiring somebody else, but you know what? We've kind of got the skills to do it. So we'll just do it for you. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that you might not even ever consider you kind of have the skills to solve the problem until it's presented to you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I can do that well enough. I don't need to be an expert to deliver a lot of this client work. I can actually just say, no, hold a sec, I know how to do that well enough. And God bless the internet, I learned everything I know through Googling and YouTube tutorials. Yeah. And so you can, like, between what you know and what you can learn, I think that, it's the sensible way to run a modern agile business. And it also means, for example, we work with very multidisciplinary creatives, is that we don't have to pass the cost on to the client of a team of 10, 15 specialists that they're not using. We don't have huge overheads to cover, because if we need a specialist, we can go and work with a particular freelancer. But most of the creatives we work with do have at least 3 or 4 different skills that we can use across multiple different projects.
Yeah.
So it makes commercial sense as well as creative sense.
Well, and this kind of polymathy that you're experiencing there, I've also kind of been toying with this idea of this polymath spectrum. So you have the jack of all trades, generalist, and polymath. There's various levels of competency as well. And so this kind of leads me to my next question here. Something I ask all my guests is, what is a polymath, do you think, to you?
I think that a polymath, beyond just being somebody that can do several things, is somebody that is in a is consciously in a constant state of learning and development. And I think that actually a true polymath is someone that is never happy with what they know, and they always want to know more. And upskill, as I suppose as we call it, in the commercial world, like all that, we want to upskill on this thing or that thing. But to actually have the desire to go and say, do you know what? I've never done this before. I want to go and do this. I want to try something new. I think that desire and that intention to try new things just for the sake of it, just because you want to know how to do it, I think is actually probably what lies behind a lot of modern day, polymaths, whatever we're calling them.
Polymaths, mathematicians.
Yeah, so
it's not mathematics, so mathematicians.
No,
I like it.
that's
I like
that.
I'm going to write that down.
So yeah, I think it's people that are never quite, and I think this maybe comes with a lot of security of people. If people have found their true calling and they want to become experts in one particular thing, do you know what? Good for them. That's how some people work.
Go have fun.
Why not? Yeah. But for those of us that are never quite happy, never quite secure that we're happy knowing as much as we do, and always want to know how to do something else. But also people that have the ability to kind of spot connections in terms of what they know and what they want to learn. So for example, silly things like, okay, I've now learned how to grow tomatoes. Now, I like to consider myself a decent enough cook. And I'm like, okay, now I want to start looking at different recipes that feature tomatoes more heavily. And also like, okay, I'm going to go and upskill on my skills in the kitchen. And once I've done that, it's like, okay, well, how can I then use, for example, can I host a dinner party? Can I do something with that to, then improve another skill? For example, I've learned how to cook tomatoes properly. Why don't I host a dinner party? And in doing that, I'll learn how to do serviette origami at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it's being able to kind of like both continual learning and looking for opportunities to learn as well, I think is kind of key to those of us that identify as polymaths. Yeah,
or at the very least aspiring polymaths. And it's interesting too, because there's a kind of idea of the T-shaped marketer where they have that specialist mindset, but they also have the bottom T part where they know more of a width aspect. And I often see polymaths as multiple T's. You have the bottom layer, but then you have multiple trees going out of that. Polymath is kind of like a sea of trees in the way. And so there's also this kind of idea that you mentioned that I remember is that this idea of a true polymath. So that polymath spectrum I mentioned earlier, there's an interesting dichotomy behind a polymath and someone who's like a true polymath, someone who's genuinely curious and trying to learn. I almost see someone kind of like Leonardo da Vinci, who's literally a master of separate fields, whereas a polymath can be kind of someone who's like they say marketing specialist is kind of a weird term, because a marketing specialist is someone who knows SEO, pay-per-click, digital media, inbound marketing, content creation, like same thing, but like, you know what I mean? That are all these different fields. A marketing specialist is just another word for marketing polymath, but that also kind of makes it seem almost like it's a marketing specialist polymath in a way. You know what I mean? Like a real true polymath will be marketing, carpentry, smart cities, that kind of thing.
I think you're definitely right, and marketing is such a fascinating, and like I say, without I don't technically have any training, I don't have my background in marketing, but having spent a few years in it now, there are so many different facets to marketing. I mean, it's a whole like, that sounds a silly thing to say, the whole industry is a whole collection of different jobs in itself. And anyone that kind of says, well, I'm a marketing specialist, okay, do you know what, maybe in a small organization, you know, you are someone that understands the basics of marketing theory and you know how to use a couple of bits, and at the end of the day you're going to go and outsource to an agency to deliver, you know, actual, you know, you understand strategy enough to know who you need to employ to do the job. But yes, whereas I think, and I suppose that's kind of where I see like myself on that kind of spectrum, I definitely see myself like, okay, well, I have an interest in marketing and I'm always learning new things about it, but actually marketing is just one thing that I do. I'm also a, you know, a creative. I also have, you know, all these other interests as well. So I'm kind of at peace with not necessarily becoming a master of my job. And I think that was quite, and I think that's why I maybe didn't enjoy like the more traditional jobs that I was in before, because that idea of a career path, for me, having a kind of a set career path took away any opportunity for spontaneity. It took away any like deviation, like any deviation is a bad thing, because then you're straying away from what's been decided, you know. Whereas actually, and I think that what I like about my career now is that, well, do you know what, every day is a different day. Do I want to go and do this today? Or, you know, and also, you know, myself and Jess, we're kind of in charge of the direction of the business too. You know, we're kind of deciding where we're specializing in, what we do, what's working well, and if it's not, we can walk away from it, you know. So I think that, yeah, for me, it's having the freedom and the flexibility to decide what I want to do when I want to do it.
Right. No, and it's interesting too, because from audio to inbound marketing, your blog actually on your agency's website talks a lot about the modern ways of communicating, such as the audio and inbound. And is there a type of communication that you think is most important that you haven't actually had a chance to talk about on there?
For us, the big one is the changing nature of retail. That everything about retail is changing, and how brands sell to consumers has already changed so much in the past few years. And it's only, you know, especially with the pandemic, all those changes are only getting faster. So the whole concept of experiential marketing, and essentially you create, you know, creating the high street, creating shopping centers as places to experience and to interact with brands, not just to go and buy a product off a shelf. That's what we're certainly really excited for. We're already, you know, working with some of our brands and some of our clients to find out how we can engage in new ways with the clients, in ways that they're essentially looking for. And you look at, you know, one of the best examples of this at the moment, or certainly up until now, has been IKEA. You know, they sell a lot of their products online, but people love going to an IKEA store because they can wander around, they can see the products in situ, they can interact with rooms and open drawers and, you know, all these different things. And it's a brilliant way of showcasing products and, you know, show everything from tiny little, you know, apartments and how you can maximize space to nice, you know, living rooms and bedrooms and whatnot. And it's a brilliant way, and people love queuing up and walking around these places because it's an experience. And I think that the further we go into the future, the less we're going to see traditional retail exist, and arguably rightly so. These changes have been coming for 10, 15, 20 years now. So it's about time we harnessed the consumer's appetite to interact with their brands.
Yeah. And just to kind of note too, IKEA has also designed their buildings to be mazes so that you're stuck inside there longer.
Oh yes.
Retail businesses are constantly changing, as you said, but in the past decade or so, it seems that has gone more exponential. And I guess this pandemic's made it even more so. For example, many clothing brand stores are closing, like Macy's, and people blame Amazon for it. But in reality, more often than not, it's the fast fashion industry that's causing the company's demise, not Amazon in this case. What are your thoughts on that evolving state?
So I'm going to hold my hands up in here and say, hello, I am a millennial. I am of that famed generation that I am responsible for the death of every single industry that has previously existed in the world. Also, that's total bullshit.
Yeah.
I am of a generation that I'm very willing to pay for convenience. And I was chatting with a friend of mine at the weekend just gone, and we were having a long conversation about what it means to be rich, or what it means to be successful. Mm-hmm. We were talking about particularly rich, and I think that the big generational divide between the boomers and the millennials is that being rich or being successful for boomers is being financially rich, having money in the bank account, and even if that means working every hour God gives to do it, you're financially rich. But I think the version of success for millennials is being time rich. It's having the time to do what you want. And if that means that you earn less money, then that doesn't matter. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you have the hours that you want to do the hobbies that you have. You have the time to spend time with friends and see family and try new things. And, so mm-hmm. I think that because of that, Amazon Prime, we have several clothing retailers in the UK in particular. I subscribe to one, and I pay extra, like Prime, for next day delivery, because I don't have to, if I'm going to buy it, I would like it tomorrow, or preferably today, if you can do that, because I don't have the time to wait, because my time is so important to me. And I think that is and I think that ironically, although I was saying earlier about having that slower pace of life, I think the reason that that's important to me is because I know that anything I could need to facilitate that, I can get practically instantaneously without so much as leaving my house to do it. Mm-hmm. So I think that actually it's not Amazon that's doing it. I think it's a genuine, I think that, for us millennials that are now in the fourth recession of our lifetimes, our priorities are changing. What we want from life has changed. Yeah. And the companies that can facilitate that are the ones that are going to win out at the end of the day.
I didn't even realize it was the fourth recession at this time. Well, and one thing I could think of is, okay, boomer, but I think we also have this mindset of time being more valuable, partially being because of like the 4-hour work week. We can thank Tim Ferriss for that. But mm-hmm. It is interesting because when I started working as like a lifeguard and swim instructor and all that stuff. But I've always been part-time, mainly because Obama recent years and the government here passed a law, if you work more than 30 hours, you have to get benefits. Well, I work for my city and they don't want to do that. They don't want to pay us benefits. So they make us work less than 30 hours. So all my life, I've always worked less than 30 hours a week. And because of that, I had more time to pursue PolyInnovator or meet people like you and stuff like that. And so I guess like my grandmother was like, hey, go get a full-time job, make more money so you won't have financial strife. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But the longer I do this, the more money I'm making with them. And on top of that too, I can be more happy with myself. So I feel
Yeah. And I think that, like I say, in terms of what success looks like, mm-hmm. For a lot of actually money is, what point is having money if you are so unhappy in doing what you need to do to get it? Mm-hmm. Now, I know that actually, ironically, of course, I speak from a position of relative privilege, that I've never had to worry about money. So I can kind of sit a little bit, on my ivory tower and say, well, you know what, for me, it's not about money or working hard, it's about living my life and enjoying it. That is because of an intense level of privilege that I have known growing up and still know to a certain extent. Obviously I do work hard and I do a lot of things, but I also know that I have time to do my hobbies because I don't need to work to do it. Mm-hmm. And whether or not that came from, presuming or, always expecting in life that I would have a base level of education, mm-hmm. or I'd always be able to, afford the internet and the equipment that I can use to upskill myself, so I think that whilst I'm saying all these things, it's very kind of in an ideal world, actually it's not the same for everyone. And if we want to continue to foster innovation and entrepreneurship, then we also need to make sure that those of us that are in a position of privilege have the take the responsibility seriously to assist those without that privilege into the creative industries in particular. So it's something that we genuinely, firmly believe about the agency, is that we do have a social responsibility to kind of break down some of the barriers that people from unprivileged backgrounds have to go through to get in, get a foot in the door. So yes, we, in an industry that is very heavily dominated by white, middle-aged, middle-class men. We are genuinely very proud of the fact that, Jess, our MD, is female. We're female-led. I'm, LGBT. We make sure that all of the freelancers that we work with, we work with a great, diverse bunch of people who, some of whom, wouldn't have had necessarily that first step, or, be able to get into the creative industry or to the marketing industry, without us.
Right.
So we do genuinely take that very seriously.
That's fantastic. I love how you're actively working towards that. So this is one of those questions, and many people might scoff at. I remember watching in a video you sent, like, oh, people ask this all the time, but what is a smart home, and or to you in particular?
So I think that a smart home in 2020 and beyond is a home that has not just devices that are connected to the internet, but devices that are intelligent enough and that talk to one another to make life easier for the people that live in it. Whether or not that's by controlling environmental factors such as temperature, such as air quality, or whether or not it interacts with your entertainment. So for example, having, lights that interact with your gaming systems or your TV or whatever else like that. But it's a collection of products and services as well that interact to enhance the lives of the people that live in it.
It's interesting. And it's the fact I've mentioned the video games syncing with the lights. That's the ambient lighting for video games on TVs. And I was looking into that back in 2011, 2012, far before Philips Hue was really even like a thing yet. And this was just interesting how Philips had a precursor to it called AmbiFX. ABFX or something like that, or AmbiX or something like that. And it was interesting how they actually had like this system where they had fans, these ambient lighting, speakers, and like a surround sound system. They were trying to really immerse you into the game. And it was fascinating. I wanted to get my hands on it because this is back when you couldn't sync up your game with the lights except for that one piece of technology. And supposedly it only worked with a handful of games too. But it's just interesting how even back then that fascinated me. And I'm sure that you might have a story like that, like something about a smart home technology fascinated you as well. Where do you see this kind of evolving over the years then?
I remember the first time that I saw the technology being used properly. And it was ironically my business partner, Jess, at her house. I went for dinner one evening with my partner and, just kind of seeing how she kind of just floated through the house with ease and just interacted with it as if it was second nature. And I was like, this is really, it's really cool. I've always been a bit of a kind of like gadgety kind of person. Yeah. But I was like, gadgets aside, this makes life so much, this just makes sense, So yeah, that's kind of what really, it's just seeing like a day-to-day use case for me was what really kind of sparked that interest and excitement for it.
You should make a podcast episode based on that experience.
Almost certainly will do, do, definitely.
It's like, and you could like almost interview your business partner as well. It'd be interesting. Yeah. What can smart homes become?
There are so many different routes that smart home already exists in, but certainly can do in the future. I think that two of the biggest ones, the first one is around social care and healthcare in the home. Smart home devices, when you look at how they can be used for caregivers, the market there and the opportunity there to allow people to live in their homes for longer is huge and significant. And that goes, at the moment, even the kind of the wearable market, for an old population, it's wearables around the neck. It's big beige, chunky plastic things with big red buttons in the middle, and it's not dignified. It's not particularly, it's very much, well, you're a big, you're a risk, so we're going to strap this thing to you and push it if you fall over. Whereas, if you deploy in the home, for example, a series of, sensors, to detect motion, and in a system that uses artificial intelligence to get to know someone's routine. If, say, for example, most mornings they'll get out of bed around this time, they'll go to the bathroom and they'll, go downstairs and make a cup of tea. If, say, by midnight, the system's all them going to bed, If by midday the next day, no motion detected, well, then why not ping something to a smart speaker that says, hi there, just checking in on you. Is everything okay? If the person responds saying, yep, all good, sorry, yep, just having a lie-in, great, perfect. If no response, well, okay, why don't we ping a notification to their primary caregiver's phone, just saying, just to let you know, haven't received any activity from them, can't get through to them. Do you maybe want to give them a call just to kind of check in on them, or do you want to, go round? And it might be absolutely fine, might be perfect. But there's so many kind of like preemptive elements, even if it's smart speakers, for example, saying, hey, don't forget you need to take your medication this morning. Right. People that are sort of like more physically restricted, but also, keeping a lot of elderly people, we've seen this especially, that are living on their own and are genuinely quite isolated.
Yeah.
Having that kind of presence, even if it's not necessarily 100% human all the time, just to kind of to talk to, almost talk at.
Yeah.
But kind of knowing that their house can look after them a little bit. I think, a lot of people, elderly people are worried that they'll have a fall in the middle of the night and then not see anyone for days. Where if you've kind of got a home that can check up on you and look after you, and also, alert people if there is a problem much sooner than they would have been able to otherwise. Right. We can allow people to live in their homes for longer. We can reduce, death rates by injury. We can make, we can also improve people's quality of life. Is the other thing.
So I just want to interject there. It's interesting how Singapore, I think, is trying to implement smart apartments for the elderly that way. I don't remember exactly where I saw this, but they were like trying to manipulate the floor having sensors. And so like when you walk, you can sense where the person is. And if someone falls, it can detect that amount of force. Or having sensors, and obviously like you can always do it. I don't know about cameras, but maybe like infrared sensors and noticing where the body is in the house and that kind of thing. It is interesting how that can make a significant difference versus life alert, help. Oh, I probably shouldn't do that. Probably trademark there, but but yeah, essentially. And then, so what are some common misconceptions then with smart homes, I should say?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's pointless. When people kind of go, I've got light bulbs, I've got light switches, I've got a hi-fi, I've got, why do I want my, why would I want my living room to be bright green? I'm perfectly happy with just, and I think that because, a lot of products when they're marketed are marketed as look at what it can do, as opposed to look at the problems it can solve. So I think that people see these products as gimmicky, as these kind of gadgets that are totally, if you don't like gadgets, you're not going to like them. But also the other thing as well is that people, I think, see them as maybe a little bit inaccessible. Like, so much of this tech is so easy to kind of use, to install and to set up. But because it's for so long kind of been marketed towards that, the early adopters who naturally are, the tech focused, the tech minded,
you and I.
Tech yeah, exactly. And they've got, great level of success, doing that. But for for that jump, from the early adopters to the mass market, people still see this as kind of just fun, kind of gadgety tech. So I think, the misconception, especially around how useful it can be and who it's for, I think is the biggest thing really holding back the market at the moment, is that people just don't understand how this technology can be used to make lives better, easier.
And that's the job of your podcast, to tell them how it is.
That's the job of our whole agency with the brands that we work with, is really trying to break through that barrier and to say, guys, stop marketing hardware, start marketing solutions. That's what we try to do, at least.
So I have this dream I want to share with you of building this high-tech, ultra-modern tiny home. So what is your opinion of smart tiny homes then?
I think they're fantastic, primarily because no matter where you are in the world, a lot, especially in the kind of more densely populated population centers, is that overpopulation and available housing is a problem. It is in London, it is in all the European capitals, and I'm sure it is in the US as well. Homelessness and bits like that. But also and this is the other thing that we haven't really talked about, is the environmental impact as well. And this is the other thing that smart homes, I think, are going to be instrumental in having to, you know, in the problems that we're looking to solve, is that the world is facing a climate crisis where people are in big sprawling homes generating enormous carbon footprints.
Mm-hmm.
If you can provide people energy efficient, small, convenient homes, especially in those places that are densely populated, you solve a lot of problems in one go.
Yeah.
So I am absolutely all for them, especially because as well, I think that, you know, we are, and I think this is something that we've seen maybe more in the past sort of 10, 15 years, is that there is a technology gap, massive technology gap opening up between those that can afford it and those that can't. And especially, I don't know about in the US, but in the UK, where practically all of our government services now are online, you know, everything from getting the weather to, you know, renewing your driver's license, you know, primarily it's all online. And if you don't have the money to pay for an internet connection, or if you live rurally and you don't have the infrastructure to access, you know, the internet, that's a huge problem. So I think that the more we can invest in reducing that gap, and that, you know, if that comes by, you know, by kitting out entry level smaller homes with tech that means that those that are going to be living in it can keep up, you know, are you know, educated in it as part of their daily life, then I think that the market will naturally follow.
Yeah. Well, and I also feel like too that tiny homes are much more easily affordable when it comes to making smart homes. Like if you take a 3-story home and try to make it smart, it's a lot of bulbs, a lot of technology, and the cost per IoT device is going to make a much more higher increase. It's already expensive to make a smart tiny home too. Well, so I just essentially wanted to share something with you, and I know this is an interview about yourself, not me per se, but I just want to share this idea because it's a nice macro view of how things go, so to speak. We talked about self-education being a great way of actually adopting new skills. And then there's the idea of tiny homes and smart homes creating this new way of living. On top of that, smart cities help directly impact that as well, which we'll get into a little bit later. But altogether, that can lead towards a new age civilization, so to speak. These types of devices may be trivial now, but they have such more profound impact and repercussions down the line.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you had a comment
absolutely.
on that or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other big problem and the other big stumbling block in terms of all of this, because this is the thing, technology exists, right? People have, you know, it's available, and, you know, especially looking at, you know, for example, Amazon, they're practically giving their hardware away now. You know, it's all about the service, not the hardware. But the big thing that the market still needs to overcome is how data is managed. And people are not going to want to live in smart cities unless they feel like they can trust their homes and their communities to essentially not be spying on them. And it's not impossible because, you know, everyone carries a mobile phone around in their pocket. We've all kind of given up with that element of privacy. I think that it's you know, and I don't get me wrong, I you know, I'm not a great, you know, conspiracy theorist and say, well, every single one of your devices is listening to you, because realistically they're not, let's face it. And also most people live really boring lives, so there's not much to listen to anyway.
Right.
But, you know, so I think that it remains practically the biggest concern that a lot of the market has is privacy and what the data, you know, managers have access to and how they're using that data. So I think that's another element that the world, the communities are still going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and you're right though too. Like Amazon and even other companies are giving away technology because it's more about the user base and what they do with the technology. I have Google Fi for my service provider for my phone, and they gave me that smart home speaker one year as a gift. And I presume it's because they wanted me to get into that, because I'm an early adopter like you, but I still had not gone around to buying that. It was one of those things. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I didn't see it as useful, but I end up using that thing like every day. And actually, just a week ago, my smartphone died. And I've been using that to make calls, play Spotify, make an alarm. It replaced my phone in that case. I'm still going to get a new one, obviously, but it is interesting how that piece of technology became a lot more useful.
A lot of the time, a lot of smart home tech, it's really interesting. The gulf but getting people from no devices to one device is enormous. Once they have that one device, and I mean, I'm a perfect example of that. I got, you know, the first, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to wake her up, an Amazon provided, you know, an Amazon based speaker. As soon as I had one, by the end of the month, I had 3 and all of my lamps with Hue bulbs in them. And that was just a start. So it very much is a gateway. You know, you just need one gateway device. It's just getting people to that one. And then the proliferation from there it's a lot easier, certainly.
That lamp behind me in this video here, if you're listening on the PolyCast on PolyInnovator, there's a RGB bulb in there. It's not fancy like Philips, but yeah, essentially, it's cool how it does evolve like that. So you actually mentioned productivity earlier in the episode, and something you said before the interview caught my eye was life doesn't always need to be measured in the levels of productivity. So how do you mean by that?
I recognize a pattern in myself. And it was this really silly thing that when people asked me how my day was, I replied with how much I got done, basically. And so I said, how was your day today? I was like, oh, it was great. I got loads done. Or they'd say, you know, I was like, oh, it's crap. I barely got anything done. I'm falling behind, you know. And I realized that I was essentially measuring my days, my happiness on how much I was achieving. And that's not healthy. Yeah. Because it means that if you have a creative block, you know, for example, you know, you almost don't give yourself the freedom to go and find the inspiration you need to get through it. So I think, and it's part of, and maybe it's why, you know, I've actually recently left. So a couple of weeks ago now, I left Twitter because I'm like, all I'm seeing, and this is the curse of social media really, is that all the people ever post is accomplishments, either complaints or accomplishments. And I was kind of like in this rut of, I was measuring myself against basically what was just a constant stream of other people achieving and getting things done. So when I then was seeing people saying, well, how was your day? I was like, well, I didn't accomplish, you know, what have I got to show for it? And that's not conducive to good work at the end of the day. So I've kind of tried to step away, you know, when people say, you know, how was your day? I kind of like, well, I now try and think of it, you know, in terms of, well, okay, how do I feel about what I did get done? Am I proud of the work that I did? You know, am I excited about developing some ideas a bit further? Am I kind of like, you know what, that wasn't my best work, but here's what I've learned from it, you know? So although productivity and what I do in a day is kind of inexplicably linked with, you know, how I feel and how my day was, it's not purely about the work, you know, either quantity or quality.
Expressing more gratitude in your life too, it feels like, from what you were saying there. And then, like we were mentioning circadian rhythm earlier too, if you're having an off day, like if you did not sleep well the night before, this past week, Monday, I woke up, terrible energy all day. I had caffeine, I tried taking a nap, tried meditating, tried doing some exercise, everything. Just could not get my energy levels up, don't know what happened. The next day, just fine. And I felt really upset that I couldn't get like stuff done on Monday. It's like, then I realized, okay, well, I had a bad energy level. Let's get over it and focus on doing something better tomorrow. Let's sleep well tonight and do better tomorrow. Yeah,
and that's it. And but when you set this expectation of yourself that you kind of have like, you've got to do X, Y, or Z. You kind of it's a self-punishment, you know, when you don't achieve that. Whereas actually, like you say, it could just be part of your natural rhythm. That like, you know what, today's not going to be a good day, and that's okay. You know, sometimes I'll get halfway through an afternoon, I think, sod this, I'm having a shit day. What I really want to do is walk away and have a nap. And I'll go, do you know what? That's what I'll go and do these days, because I have the freedom and the flexibility to go and do that. But I mean, even if that means, you know, pulling extra hours later on when I am more productive and feeling, you know, better, then so be it. You know, that's just, but I'd much rather work that way and encourage others to do so as well.
So we kind of skirted around all this too, but what started the Beacon Agency?
Good question. It was a silly thing to say. It was my business partner, Jess, had the opportunity, essentially had our first client lined up through a business, a business contact that she had through her old job. So that's kind of like, that's the logistics of how we set it up. But I think that we were both looking for something a little bit more meaningful in terms of our professional lives. yeah, the kind of the big thing that we believe in is that we kind of felt, especially in the marketing industry, which is something that I've been looking to do for a while, you know, like I say, as a freelancer, is that there was a better way of doing things, you know, where there's, and essentially the kind of approach that we have and that we quite readily talk about is no bullshit, basically. You know, there's so much crap just sloshing around, you know, especially in agencies. But we were like, do you know what? We're going to be quite honest and say, do you know what? We don't have huge overheads because we all work remotely. We don't have an office, which means that we're not going to charge you this stupid amount of money to pay for an office that we're not using, or, you know, to pretend that we have an office, you know, whereas actually, you know, what we do is we do have a, you know, a physical base that, you know, we sometimes go and use, but we're not sat there day in, day out, you know. So it's kind of this belief that what we want, you know, the thing that's most important to us, other than, you know, our internal culture and our social responsibility, is client relationships, building genuine trust and saying, you know, if a client comes to us and say, hey, I've got X budget, this is what I want to spend it on. Mm-hmm. Because we're a hybrid, you know, strategy and creative marketing agency, is that if they come to us and say, this is my budget, this is what I want to spend it on, sometimes we'll turn around to them and say, save your money, don't spend it on that. Why don't you spend half of that, but spend it more wisely here? And sometimes, you know, all we need to do then is kind of, you know, we kind of build that relationship of trust with our clients because, you know, we genuinely want the best for them. So yeah, I think that's really what started the agency and what spurred us on, is a belief that we can do better work by working more closely in partnership with our clients, rather than kind of treating them as cash cows that we need to kind of get the most amount of money out of. Actually, at the end of the day, so, you know, it's more important for us to deliver better work that it is of more value to the client than it is for them to just, or for us to just kind of take them for all they're worth.
Yeah. So what makes the difference in your company is the quality and the amount of effort you guys are putting forth and trying to just making sure you have that quality connection. Where do you see the agency going? Where do you hope to take it?
So we have been quite sort of clear internally where we see ourselves going, and we don't want to just grow for the sake of it. Mm-hmm. We kind of have a 4 or 5 year plan of what we would like to do is get to a team of maybe sort of between 10 and 15 people, have a roster of good, you know, exciting clients that we do great work for. And after that, we would much rather people come to us and say, I've heard great things about you. I love the work that you do. I want to work with you. Mm-hmm. Rather than just go out and pitch endlessly to clients that we're not necessarily the best fit for, just because we've set ourselves, you know, these ridiculous financial targets, you know, say, well, you know, we've said that in the next few years, we're going to double the business, and then we're going to double it again, and we're going to double it again, and we're just going to go bigger and bigger and bigger, because, you know, at a certain point, actually it becomes more about money than client relationships. Yeah. So where we see the agency is becoming a boutique agency that specializes in the industry, that is renowned for good work and that people want to work with. And if that means, you know, that we aren't the biggest agency in the world, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Genuinely, that's not what we want. And it's not what I hope it's kind of not what our clients want. It's not why they work with us. They work with us because they know that if they need us, they can drop us a message on WhatsApp and we'll pick it up and do what they need for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, you're making that podcast to help to show that you actually are in this world. You're trying to share your knowledge and impart that kind of genuine nature to it. And so the Smart Life podcast is talking about the future and all the ways smart technologies can improve our lives. How do you think we can expand that mindset too into like the citywide structure? We were kind of alluding to smart cities earlier, as in, yeah.
So do you know what? It's something that actually crops up quite a lot when we talk to our guests is what's kind of stopping that leap from the smart home with a few connected products to the smart cities. And time again, what we end up talking about is infrastructure and investment. Everything, you know, and it's different, I suppose, in the UK because we are a much smaller country. But, you know, everything from like so we were talking the other day actually about electric vehicles. Fantastic market opportunity, obviously the way the market is going. But the UK power grid, if everyone overnight is plugging their cars in at the same time, the grid can't support that. So no matter how good the technology gets, no matter what the market, demand is for it, at the moment, we don't have the infrastructure to be able to support it. Similarly with, for example, using smart thermostats in, older homes, for example, to help, prevent heat, energy escape through the walls and through, it's like, well, actually, we have a very old and a very large, relatively old housing stock here. It's not we don't need to be building, all this money that's going on for new builds and making them, eco-friendly. What we actually need to be doing is spending all that money on insulation and retrofitting technology to make the existing housing stock so much better. So it's like, what actually I think is really going to get us from smart homes to smart cities, smart communities, is real investment where it's needed, not just where it's flashy and headline grabbing. And I think that, once we can kind of solve some of those problems, everything from access to internet connectivity in rural communities to, ensuring that there's enough power in the grid, for everything that, everyone would need at the same time. So I think that's kind of what's holding us back a little bit at the moment, is the ability to do what we need, what people want to do.
So yeah, the infrastructure aspect. And one thing I kept picking up from there is the energy aspect. And one connection I can make between smart homes and smart cities mentally is the energy grid, like you're mentioning there. The US is not any better. We have all analog, and that's just the cables dragging along. And I was watching a lot about digital electric grids, where it's like software defined. And I even had a question there for you down the line too. It's like, in the home, if we had a software defined system, it could tell what device is plugged into the outlet and then tell that to the computer that's at the generator, and then allocate the exact amount of electricity it needs to that outlet. Versus right now, all of our homes are sending an absurd amount of electricity to those outlets. And there's a lot of heat escape, allowing this energy just to basically go out for nothing, just waste. And then on top of that, could overpower some technologies in some cases too. So it's very inefficient. The analogy that a lot of the digital grids talk about is like instead of sending a small garden hose to your outlet, it's like a fire truck hose, just shooting the amount of energy, like we're just overdoing it. Same thing on the big scale too, the citywide grid. You said it, like if everyone was doing those smart electric cars at their homes, the grid couldn't handle it because it wouldn't know which one to send first. It wouldn't be able to handle the literal loads because it's going to oversend too much, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And tragically in the UK, there's well documented cases of intense spikes on the national grid, and primarily it comes, when, for example, there's a World Cup football match on. If they go to adverts at half time, everyone puts the kettle on at the same time to make themselves a cup of tea. And you can see it on the graph. It's like, oh well, this is where half time is, and the spike is enormous because all of a sudden you've got 20 million homes all running a power intensive device at the same time. And that's a kettle for maybe 5 minutes at one go. If you're doing the same thing, but everyone has an electric vehicle every night, it's just not manageable. And I think that a lot of it, you're right, does start in the home, in terms of making sure that, to the power outlets, you're only giving as much energy as is required. But also, and I think that actually there's been a large push in the past 5 to 10 years around energy efficiency of devices, almost to a point where we're actually, a lot of devices are very, incredibly efficient these days. And legislation, either at a UK level or a European level, has mandated that, light bulbs cannot use more than X amount of energy. Fridge freezers cannot use more than X amount of energy, and every device that is sold comes with an energy rating. And so it's almost as if we're some of the way there, and we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but we need to do this on just an infinitely larger scale to use this technology properly and to really get the benefits. And I would say, from an energy point of view, the sooner the better, because the climate crisis is real, it's happening, and we need to respond to it now.
Where do you think smart cities can help with that?
I think that when you have more energy efficient buildings, devices, homes, the amount of energy they're going to be using by default will be less. I think that we need, when you can build homes or build buildings, office buildings, hotels, gardens, whatever, where renewables form a part of the architecture, whether or not that's solar panels on roofs, or even, in Singapore, as an example of the building tower forests, where plants are built into the side to help reduce the carbon footprint of these buildings and bits like that. So again, the technology is there, but I think that there is still some reluctance because, whether or not it's the lobbying efforts of the more traditional fossil fuel industry or, anything like that, but the technology is there. It's just mandating its use at scale, I think is going to be huge. And I think smart cities is almost just saying smart cities and like looking at, for example, capital cities, of course, huge pollutant, cities that they are. Actually, we need to be looking at smart towns, smart villages, smart communities. So we don't just kind of like rely on centers of, energy efficiency. It becomes part and parcel of, at a national and international level as well.
Well, and it goes back to the idea of building back up. We have smart homes and then smart communities, so more villages and stuff like that, especially probably in the UK as well. And then, because there's probably way more there than no, not necessarily, because I guess with urban sprawl, there is a lot of communities around. I remember watching a video about how the reason why we have certain cities, especially where I live in Missouri, where there's a lot of random townlets around me. And it's because like every 7 miles, I guess, is where cars needed to refuel when we were building our roads. And so, or like even before we were like cars, it was like horse riding, or no, it was walking. It was like how far someone could walk before needed like restock. It was like 7 days of walk or something like that. It was just crazy how it was just a certain interval, and that's where all the cities were. And those small towns and townlets could be perfect places to start out building the smart technologies. So speaking of climate change and just changes in the world as a whole, how has the smart home industry been responding to the pandemic at the moment?
I think the pandemic has changed the way that we use and exist in our home. So I think that the biggest thing is that in the smart home industry is that the way that people view their homes and the things that they use their homes for has completely changed. So we've gone from, for a lot of people, home has gone from somewhere that they cook and sleep and, see their family every now and again, to their offices, to, 95% of their waking and sleeping time is spent, within the same four walls. So I think that people's expectations of what their home is, how it needs to work, what it can do for them, has fundamentally changed. And I think it's a huge opportunity for the smart home market to respond by, allowing this technology and by demonstrating this technology to exist in such a way that can benefit people, whether or not they're in work mode, whether or not they're in home, family mode, whatever it is. This is technology that can pervade a lot of their life. And I think the other thing as well is that people have turned to technology to get them through some of the tougher times. I can't count how many Zoom calls I've done, and that's everything from socializing with friends to catching up with family, grandparents that are shielding or, whatever it is. So I think that people are much more receptive to technology. And the other thing as well is that we undertook during, in the midst of lockdown, we undertook a survey that we asked about 150 respondents, what their view of the smart home is and how it changed throughout lockdown. And by far, the biggest thing that people were looking for about home and smart home is in terms of health and well-being. you know, especially when they were stuck indoors, you know, whether or not that's using wearables to, you know, make sure they're getting enough exercise, to air quality monitors to make sure that, you know, the air that they're breathing is healthy and safe and whatnot. So I think people are looking for solutions, but the big thing that, you know, a lot of people said they were still reluctant on the tech is that they just didn't know clearly enough what technology they needed and how it could work, how it can actually work for them. So I think the smart home industry has a real opportunity here to form part of people's daily lives if they can only harness it.
Yeah, and get the foot in the door, like you're saying, that one device. Like Google sending me that device there, or the A word that we can't say out loud. Set them off. So yeah, that's interesting how everything has come together like that. And we mentioned how there's like accelerants, there's education, there's work from home, there's Zoom, all these different companies and aspects that are changing. But it seems like the smart technologies aren't changing right now. But I feel like they have the potential to, like you said, and we need to tap into that.
Definitely. And it was really interesting. My partner Jess was out in I'm going to say this again, Las Vegas. It's CES, isn't it? Consumer Electronics Show. Yes, I was about to say CFS because they're one of our clients.
Okay.
I'm going to say that again. So it's really interesting. My business partner Jess was over in Las Vegas for CES at the beginning of this year, and they were saying that one of the big trends in the smart home that they can sort of foresee for the next 10 years is that for the past 10 years, it's all been about the intelligence of things. IoT, I'm going to say that again because I've said it the wrong way around. So for the past 10 years, the smart home industry had all been about IoT, the Internet of Things, making sure that, you know, your standard devices were connected. But that actually a lot of the, you know, people now kind of consider that a lot of their appliances are going to be connected as standard. The Internet of Things exists, right? So the next 10 years are going to be about the intelligence of things, about harnessing artificial intelligence, about machine learning, about recognizing patterns in data, about usage and how this technology is being used to go beyond just simple connected devices to then start offering intelligent solutions. And actually, I think that the real mark of what a smart home is going to be in the future is one where people don't even recognize it as smart anymore. It's just sits in the background and it just works and they don't even have to think about it.
Right.
And interestingly, it's kind of the same we talk about internally, sort of where the smart home market is at the moment. And it's kind of where the PC market was at 20 years ago, where the mobile phone was at 10 years ago. People were still calling them, 10 years ago, they were still smartphones. We don't call them smartphones, they're just phones. They're just, this is what phones do as standard. So I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see smart home just become home. It's just what we expect from our homes. And I think that in doing that, if we can kind of really steer and help, make sure that consumer attitudes are feeding in, it's a dialogue between manufacturers, retailers, and the market to really deliver tech that people want and can use and actually makes a difference in their lives, rather than just tech that is kind of cool,
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see that develop, and I hope that you and I both get to be in the forefront of that. And before we end up wrapping up, where can people find you online?
Good question. I was on Twitter, but I'm no longer, because all about that digital detox. I am on Instagram, handle at TATKJOY. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, Thomas Joy. I think my handle is Thomas W. Joy on LinkedIn.
So I'll have the links to your agency and podcast and those two socials as well down in the description below. What could be like a call to action for our audience today besides checking you out?
Good question. So I would say if people that are watching are going to do one thing, is that take advantage of, there are a lot of sales, especially on smart home tech at the moment, like Labor Day sales in the US. Amazon Music have been giving away, I think, Alexa devices or $1. Spotify have been giving away Google Home Minis for free if you've got a premium subscription. If you don't have any smart home tech, start with something you can get them, they've basically been given away. Get one. If you don't like it, unplug it, get rid of it, sure. But I say if you haven't experimented with one yet, go ahead and get one and just just start seeing, if it can make a difference to your life.
That's awesome. And then, thank you. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. This is Thomas Joy, the lawyer, creative, director, musical, multidisciplinary polymath there on the PolyMath PolyCast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Dustin.